everybody. Hello, and welcome to another session. And this is part 3 of Mrs. Dippy and Her Amazing Inventions by Tony Mitton. Mrs. Dippy's Car. It was an ordinary morning at Mrs. Dippy's. Dent the robot dog was plugged in to get his battery working. Drudge the robot was busy watching tele. And Mrs. Dippy was at the breakfast table, reading the paper. It says there's going to be lots of sunny weather, said Mrs. Dippy. I think we need a rest from the housework. She carried on, looking hard at Drudge. Let's have a day out. The two robots sat up suddenly. We could go walking in the mountains, said Mrs. Dippy. That would be too tiring, bleeped Drudge. Well, what about visiting the big city? Tried Mrs. Dippy. Crackle, crackle. Too noisy. Too many machines, buzzed Dent. I know, cried Mrs. Dippy. How about the seaside? Lots of sand to dig in for Dent, and Drudge can just lie down on it and rest. Perfect, crackled the two robots together. How are we going to get there? Muttered Mrs. Dippy. She was surrounded by maps and timetables, and Drudge was looking over her shoulder. There are no trains or buses to the best beaches, and it's much too far to walk. Drudge nodded. He didn't want to walk. We need a car, really. Most people go by car, but I can't afford one. Dent started scratching at the door to the storeroom. Of course, said Mrs. Dippy. Clever dog. I can invent one, can't I? Storeroom, and he was scratching here. Scratch, scratch. The storeroom was nearly empty. So Mrs. Dippy took her hand cart and went to the junkyard. Drudge and Dent climbed in and went along for the ride. How much for them? Asked the junkman, pointing to the two robots. They're not for sale, said Mrs. Dippy crossly. We've come to buy bits for a car. Drudge and Dent liked the junkyard. It felt cozy to them. They helped Mrs. Dippy to make a pile of useful-looking bits. Some of the things they piled up to make the car with were an old sofa, pram wheels, umbrellas for a roof, and a washing machine for the engine, good for making a clean getaway. Did you say these were for making a car? Asked the junkman, scratching his head and looking puzzled. Well, more of a beach buggy, really, said Mrs. Dippy. We'll take this whole pile here. Thank you. When they got home, the two robots helped Mrs. Dippy spread the bits out on the floor of her workshop. They wanted to watch her make the car. While Mrs. Dippy worked, they kept interrupting her. Will it talk like us? Asked Dent. Will it do the hoovering instead of me? Asked Drudge. Will it have a name? What shall we call it? Asked Dent. Wait and see, said Mrs. Dippy firmly, as she sawed and screwed and fiddled and tinkered. At last the car was ready. It was a very unusual kind of car. It doesn't look like a car, said Drudge slowly. Will it go? Asked Dent. He looked worried. Of course it will, said Mrs. Dippy crossly. You're a perfectly good beach buggy, aren't you, Dally? Beep, said Dally. She talks, cried the two robots with glee. Wow! Time to pack, said Mrs. Dippy, looking proudly at Dally. Dally was soon packed up with the picnic and beach things. "Off we go now, Dally," said Mrs. Dippy at the wheel, and off they went. As they travelled, Drudge and Dent looked around them. There was so much to see. "Look at that castle," bleeped Drudge. Everyone looked at the castle. "Look at that tree," buzzed Dent. Everyone looked at the tree, but it was too late. Bang! There were bits everywhere. The only one left in one piece was Mrs. Dippy. "Lucky I brought my toolkit," she said seriously, picking a screw out of a sardine sandwich. "Now let's get these machines put back together in a sensible sort of way. There's still time for a good day out if I get on with it. I suppose to start with I'd better sort out which bits are which. I suppose to start with I'd better sort out which bits are which." They were soon all ready to set off again. "I'm tired," said Dally. "Can you carry me?" "Vroom, vroom," said Drudge. "Let's go." "Beep, beep," said Dent. "There's something not quite right here," said Mrs. Dippy. "I think I'd better take another look at your insides." Mrs. Dippy's machines were soon back together again. This time they were all making the right noises. "Buzz, buzz," barked Dent, jumping onto the sofa seat. "Bleep, bleep," crackled Drudge, climbing in slowly. "Beep, beep," tooted Dally, rocking on her wheels. "That's more like it." "That's more like it," said Mrs. Dippy, getting into the driver's seat once again. "To the sea!" they all cried as they drove off into the sunshine. After a while, Drudge said he could see something glittering far away. "It's all sort of silvery blue and shiny," he bleeped. "That's the sea," said Mrs. Dippy. "It's where we're going." "What's it made of?" bleeped Drudge. "It's made of water, of course," Mrs. Dippy explained. "We don't have to wash up in it, do we?" bleeped Drudge, looking worried. "Or do any laundry there?" he added, looking even more worried. "Wait and see," smiled Mrs. Dippy. "Here we are," said Mrs. Dippy, parking Dally neatly on the beach. "This is the seaside. Isn't it nice?" "I'm going to lie down and rest on the sand," bleeped Drudge, settling down for a good snooze. "And I'm going to do some doggy digging next to Drudge," said Dent. "And I'm going to invent a deck chair to sit in," said Mrs. Dippy. "I brought the bits with me, specially for it." "Just a minute," she said, before getting down to work. "Where's Drudge?" Drudge was buried in sand. Only the top of his head was showing. "Oh, bad boy," she said to Dent. "Dig him up at once. He'll get sand in his workings, and then anything could happen. Now where's Dally? Oh dear." The tide had come right in, and Dally was surrounded by water. "Look out," bleeped Drudge. "She'll get washed up." "Don't worry," said Mrs. Dippy. She got a TV channel flicker from her bag. She pressed a button, and the umbrellas flipped over to make floats, so that Dally was like a boat. "I was keeping that as a surprise for you. Aren't I clever? Now, who would like a trip around the bay in Dally the floating car? All aboard!" Mrs. Dippy and her two robots climbed in and set off. "What a lot of water," bleeped Drudge nervously. "It reminds me of the kitchen sink." "Buzz, barked Dent. He had seen a catfish. "What's that coming towards us?" bleeped Drudge. "Is it a robot fish?" "No," said Mrs. Dippy. "It's a submarine and it's going to crash into us. But don't worry, I've got a special emergency button. Hold tight. Everybody, here we go." What do you think will happen next? And that's it for now, guys. Hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. Have a lovely evening. Bye-bye. Take care and stay safe. God bless. God bless.